Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast.
This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode. So many manufacturers are having trouble deciding on how they best can upgrade to smart digital manufacturing in their plants in order to see increased profits. Making a commitment to upgrade to digital manufacturing is not for the faint at heart. On today's episode of Factory of the Future, David Marshall will share stories about how he took over a non-profitable plant and made it profitable through investments in automation, measuring results, and changing the culture. David will also tell the story of how he made a decision to close an old plant and build a new fully automated one. Starting from scratch like this is not easy. David will explain how he made decisions on the best location, size, equipment, vendors, measurements to use, and finding new employees who were skilled with using automation. By the end of this conversation, you will have some fresh insights to use as you work through the process of automating and digitizing your own plants. First, let me tell you a little bit about David Marshall. He is a senior manufacturing executive with corporate culture development and operational excellence expertise. David most recently was president and COO of Rob Roy Industries, as well as a board member where he oversaw this manufacturing organization's 4 locations in the United States. During his tenure, David implemented cutting-edge technology into these facilities during renovations of several plants, including the build-out of an ultra-modern 130,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Texas. With his guidance, these companies saw 7 record years of profitability, 11 consecutive years with profitability exceeding 20%, and more than 300 million added to the business's equity since going private in 2001. David earned his MBA from the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business. He currently consults manufacturers that want to achieve operational excellence, turn around a flagging operation, or find new ways to measure their productivity and improve their workforce. His motto is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. So let's bring in David. David, welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast.
Michelle, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. And so let's just get started by talking a little bit. We really want to dive into this particular project and find out how you did all these amazing things that I talked about in the introduction. But first, just give the listeners an idea of your background in manufacturing and kind of why did you even go into manufacturing in the first place, and why did you want this to be your career and your area of expertise?
The reason I went into manufacturing was I had an opportunity to, at a very young age, to become part of a very, very small company, actually in South Africa.
Ah.
And it was a small fencing company. And so I took that opportunity, and in the mid 1970s, right, I was making a pretty good income, but I was living in a place where I couldn't spend the money.
Ah,
that doesn't make a lot of sense.
That doesn't sound like much fun.
No. So I decided that I would emigrate and therefore, right, I emigrated to Canada, and I actually joined a lighting company as a salesperson, and I was with them for 16 years. And I started as a salesman, and within 2 years I was a regional sales manager, and within 5 years they had offered me a general managership of one of their manufacturing operations.
Wow.
And it was a very, very steep learning curve, and I learned an awful lot in a very short space of time, and made a lot of mistakes.
Sure.
But I had a wonderful mentor, because he allowed me to make the mistakes, and he said he didn't mind the mistakes so long as I had the strength of character to stick around and fix them.
Yeah.
So that was back in the days when, just to give you an example, something like we're living today. All the purchasing in the company was done in US dollars. All the sales was in Canadian dollars. And at that point in time, the Canadian dollar was worth 105 to the US dollar.
Okay.
Overnight, the Canadian dollar dropped to 69 cents to the US dollar. That's a 34% drop, which was a 34% increase in the cost base, right, of the business.
Yeah.
That was kind of a shocker.
I guess so.
So as I say, it is somewhat reminiscent of the things that we're living today, right? But those people who haven't lived through that before, right? It really can be debilitating. So anyway, the answer is pretty simple, right? But it takes courage, right? And that is make sure you're increasing your prices at a greater rate than your costs are increasing.
Right. Simple math, right?
That's correct. Providing, right, you have a product, right, that people are still interested in buying and is useful.
Right, exactly. So you talked about your mentor and that you made some mistakes, but of course we all know that sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. And so can you maybe give me an example of something you learned from, in those days, a lesson that you learned that still sticks with you?
Yes. I took over this business, and the first physical inventory that I took, I had to take a $500,000 write-down.
Okay, what does that mean? What is a write-down?
That means that the inventory was overvalued. It was not valued at the lower of cost. So that meant that I had to eat a $500,000 loss.
Oh, no.
And this was not a very big business. It was only a $10 million business.
I mean, $500,000, that's a lot of money in anybody's accounting.
That is an incredible amount.
Absolutely.
And the lesson I learned from that was measure everything every day, because if you don't, it can very quickly, right, get out of control. It can speed away from you.
And this is where you came up, I guess, with your motto: if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
That's absolutely true.
And so you're talking about, when you're talking about measure everything, give us some examples. What are some of the things that are important to measure, that things that most people wouldn't already know or already think about?
Well, measure how many invoices do you put out every month? How many credit notes do you put out every month? Because every credit note that you put out is a mistake, is an error, right? And is actually eating into your profitability, right? Which of your products do you sell the most of, and which of your products do you sell the least of?
Right.
Right? And which of your products do you have the highest gross margin, and which of your products do you have the lowest gross margin? You want a lot fewer of the latter.
Sure.
Then,
of course. I mean, I've heard some manufacturers and some companies say that they even got rid of product lines. They just quit selling them, or they quit marketing them, or maybe they still had them and they were there if people requested them, but they didn't. They kind of fired some of their products, so to speak, or got rid of them, purged them from their inventory that weren't making good money.
Yes, in one of the companies that I ran, right, I had them do an ABC analysis of their catalog, and they found that 34% of the products they offered in their catalog represented less than 0.5% of their total revenue.
Wow.
So when you think about it, right, it's pretty stupid, because the cost of maintaining that, even in a catalog, in other words, the cost of putting the catalog is worth a hell of a lot more than the rest of it,
right?
Irrespective as to the inventory costs and so on and so forth. So I had them discontinue that 34% of that catalog.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And it also means that you don't have to have that much inventory, and you don't need that many people to handle all the transactions that go around handling 34% of products that only represent 0.5% of your total revenue.
Right. Now, David, you're very experienced, and that's not to say that you're old, but you have a lot of experience. And so, when did you first start? I can't remember if it said in the bio when you actually graduated from the business school, but how long have you been out there in the working world?
Ooh.
I mean, I want to measure your experience. I'm taking your advice. I want to measure this.
Since 1970.
Okay, so since 1970. And so if we do the math, that's 52 years. Okay, yep. I'm a word person, not a math person. So
that's good.
Not a number person. Okay, so for 52 years. Because this is the factory of the future, I'm just really curious, because we all have our own sort of evolution of modern manufacturing, of what we've seen from the time we got into this industry till now. What are some of the biggest innovations and changes and exciting things that you've seen throughout the course of your evolution of your manufacturing career?
Right. Probably the two biggest things, right? If I could,
of course,
this way, is
please.
One is attitude, and the other one is intestinal fortitude.
Okay, so attitude.
Now, what do I mean
attitude, I think I understand, but you can explain further if you want, and definitely explain intestinal fortitude, which I think I kind of have an idea, but I want to hear your definition of both those things.
Okay. If you have an existing business that has been in business for a lot of years, you can't automate it overnight.
Right.
Because you're not Elon Musk.
Right.
He can create cash out of thin
air.
Right.
Exactly.
And but you have to be able to manage, right, your business at the same time as you're improving your business. So the intestinal fortitude comes in terms of recognizing what you need to do and the order in which you need to do it, and being dedicated to getting it done within a fixed period of time.
Yeah. And so you need to have a plan.
And you need to, and the plan has to come from
Measurements. Okay. So you actually put all of this to practice. I mean, you created a smart factory, right? You created a
Yes.
factory of the future.
Yes.
Give me, I mean, we could probably sit here for several hours if I asked you to just tell the story, but I want you to hit the highlights. So, what did that factory look like when you first started this project, I guess you would call it? And what all did you add? And how did you turn it from being a non-profitable, simple manufacturing facility to a smart facility that was making a profit?
Okay. I'll give you an example, and I will truncate
Okay,
it.
perfect.
This was a company that was actually started in the 50s, and it was in the oil field business. It actually made fiberglass liners that went inside oil field tubulars to inhibit corrosion,
Okay.
which is a good product
Hmm.
because in the oil field business, corrosion is a huge
No,
problem.
absolutely.
And in the mid 50s, first of all, there was no secondary industry that supported a business like that. So therefore, the people that were managing the business at that stage, they had to, it was like Rube Goldberg. They had to create something out of
I
nothing.
see. Yeah.
And they just happened to pick some of the worst technology you could think of to do it. For argument's sake, the part of the process is curing resin over fiberglass, which requires heat.
Right.
And they chose to use hot oil. Now, you look surprised.
Yeah.
Well, that was their known technology at the time, and it turned out to be the filthiest technology you could ever imagine, by virtue of the fact that the not only was it dangerous because if the boiler caught fire, you had a real
Right.
problem, but the waste from that, right, was something that was a real problem.
Right. Right.
In the 50s, there wasn't the same kind of regulations there are today
Yeah.
because there wasn't a focus on sustainability. In other words, the focus then was on getting the job done, not necessarily getting the job done with sustainability. At the same time, it was in the part of the world in West Texas where the oil field industry was absolutely boom and bust. And one day, right, a place like Odessa. Have you
I
ever been to
actually have
Odessa,
been there.
Texas? It's also known as Slow Death.
Yeah, I've been there. They used to have a big oil and gas conference there right outside of Odessa in Midland. And
Yes,
so I've been
Midland,
there a
right.
couple of times.
Right. And so it in the boom times, right? It was just a hotel room that would normally cost you $50 would cost you $500.
Right.
But the people, right, were a little funky.
Yeah.
I would run a drug screen in the facility, and I would lose 30%.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's a problem.
But that is just the nature
Right.
of that industry.
Right.
So eventually, right, with the bad technology, the sustainability issues, the environmental issues, the fact that people really didn't care. There was so much business that if you fired them, they'd just walk next door and get another
Oh,
job,
yeah.
right? There was absolutely no damn point, right, in trying to sustain that. So I got so mad one day, I said, you know what? We're going to build a facility, right, that is not going to be people dependent,
Aha.
right?
Yeah.
That is going to be something that can provide us a minimum of 6 times the capacity so that we can develop into the future, and is not located in West Texas.
Yeah. Location means
And
everything, right? In real estate and in business.
yes,
It's
it does.
important.
And that's exactly what we did. Now, you're familiar with an oil field tubular, right?
Yes.
They are very big and they are very heavy, right? So you have to have a means of being able. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. Something popped up on the
Oh,
screen.
you're good. Yeah.
You have to have a means of being able to move the product, right, and without injuring
I
people.
see. Yeah.
So my concept, right, was to go from 7 individual fiberglass winding machines, right, to 4 multi-spindle work cells that was fully automated and utilized AI, right, in which it would only require 1 operator per work cell.
Now, what's the timeline here? What year are we talking about?
We're actually talking about 2007.
2007. So you were already incorporating artificial intelligence. You were incorporating
Yes.
automation.
Yes.
So would you say you were ahead of the curve at that time? Or were you in line with a lot of the automation boom that was happening?
No, it was probably in line with what was happening. But because this was a niche product in a niche market, it was unique,
right?
Because it was not readily available, because there are not that many manufacturers of this kind of product.
Yeah, right.
So we actually went from 140 people to 19.
To 19?
90.
Okay. Still.
No.
One. So 19. Okay. I did hear you right the first time. So that's quite a decrease in manpower. And of course that saves you quite a bit of money, right?
Well, it not that it saved money, but what it did was it took a lot of waste out of the system.
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
In other words, each one of the work cells, right, would collect 44,000 pieces of data per shift, right? That could be measured.
Yeah. Wow.
Which guaranteed quality and full traceability of the product, even back to the source material that was being used. Because the last thing you want to be in the oil field industry is somebody associated with the Gulf of Mexico.
Right, sure, of course. That makes perfect sense. I can understand that.
And by the way, our product is in all the water injectors in the Gulf of Mexico.
I'm really curious to hear about your red button, green button automation goal. I heard a little bit about this. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that was my objective.
Okay.
To me, the perfect manufacturing operation is when you got 1 red button and 1 green button, and you walk in the morning and you press the green button, and you leave at night. And
it's just green for go, red for stop?
That's it. But
Seems simple enough, but I'm sure it's a little more complex than that.
by the way, it's a lot more complex than that. I managed to get it down to 19 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was pretty good, and it actually has been a very, very sustainable business, even through these tough oil field times.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you have to always be thinking about, even in a good economy, what could happen next. Like you just never know. And so if you're a profitable company, you can survive those times, right? But if you're tight and not having very much profit, and you have 34% of your catalog isn't selling, and you have 100 extra people, then those tough times can really be tough.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because, by the way, the cost of the people is very, very small. It's probably less than 3%.
Is that right? Because a lot of people, and maybe they're not measuring everything as they should, but a lot of people think that the manpower is a big.
The cost of labor is very small.
Okay, yeah.
But what is not small is, for argument's sake, human stupidity. The cost of workers' comp.
Yeah.
Is not.
Oh,
small,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. The cost of poor quality is not small.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of that, right, is human related.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So during this whole process of transforming this facility and making it profitable, what surprised you the most? What are some things that surprised you during that process?
The thing that surprised me the most is the fact that vendors, right, even though they advertise and promise, right, and guarantee, if you will, outcomes,
right,
very seldom deliver on that.
Yeah.
And the only way you know is when you've stepped in something squishy and small.
Uh-oh. That's the first clue, right?
That's the first clue.
And so this was the biggest surprise for you. Was this were there other challenges that you had to overcome other than those things?
No, that was the biggest challenge, was managing that. Because out of all the vendors I used, there was really only one that was I would call the perfect vendor.
Yeah.
And that was the vendor that provided the robotics.
Yeah.
And they provided a product that could move mandrels around the facility, that weighed up to 1,200 pounds,
yeah,
right, and were 45 foot long, right, and they did it time after time after time after time after time.
Yeah.
They never had a headache. They never had a hangover. They never had a marital problem. They never had.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing so many more robotics these days in plants, and you see them replacing the human element. And there's a big debate to be had there, because some people will argue that pretty soon all the people will be replaced. I tend to think that robots can't do some things. They can't do some of the innovative, creative thinking and the ideas and that sort of thing. So I think there's always going to be a place for humans. And of course, humans really have to fix the robots when they break down, because they do break down. But as we're talking about people, because that's been a big part of this conversation, I wasn't expecting that, but I think it's an important point to make. We have to talk about culture. So let's talk a little bit about culture and the role that plays in making a smart factory successful.
Oh, you really want to do this?
Pardon me?
I'm teasing. I said, do you really want to do this?
Yes. I do want to know what you think about a company's culture and the role it plays. Yeah, let's talk about it. Is this going to be controversial?
No, it's not controversial. I learned a long time ago through making a lot of mistakes and having a good mentor that there are 4 things in a business that are non-negotiable.
Okay.
And if you drive the 4 things that are non-negotiable, right, through your whole organization, it will make your life and your culture and your product that much better.
Okay, and those 4 things?
Number 1, safety. It's not negotiable.
Right.
There is no progressive discipline for safety infraction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're just a dead duck because
yeah.
There's no recovery from
right.
that. Secondly, housekeeping. It's got to be impeccable, right? Because in manufacturing is inherently dirty, but it's a personal choice as to whether you want to be dirty about manufacturing.
Yeah.
I don't know how many manufacturing operations you've
I've been in almost 100 all over the world.
And
yeah.
How many have you really wanted to eat off the floor?
There have been a few that were clean enough to eat off the floor, and they were some that you didn't even want to be in there at all. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So to me, you got to be able to eat off the floor.
Yeah, I think it's...
And housekeeping is everybody's responsibility, not just the janitor, right? If you're standing next to a pile of poop, clean it up. It doesn't have to be yours.
So clean up after all the dogs, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be a candid conversation. What? No, it's all good. What? I'm enjoying it very much. So, what are the other 2 things that are non-negotiable?
The productivity is non-negotiable. You have to improve your productivity a little bit every day, everywhere, right? Otherwise, right, somebody bigger is going to eat your lunch.
Yeah.
So you have to improve your productivity. And the 4th one, this is really going to get you. Check your ego at the front door and bring your damn brains inside.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Which do you think people fail on the most?
I don't know. Maybe number 4?
Maybe number 4.
Yeah. I mean, that's a human problem.
Yes, because if 99.9% of all conflict that happens in either a company or in social circles or whatever the case may be, is ego-driven, not fact-driven.
Right.
But if you measure everything, right, then everything becomes objective, not subjective.
Right.
So it also, right, evens out the gender issue, right, and it also evens out, right, whether I'm older so I know more than you do. No, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like when you decided to go from, I can't remember the number of employees and whittle that down to only 19 employees. Remind me of that number.
Yes.
I can't remember.
It was 130.
130 to 19. How did you make decisions on the 19 that stayed? And I'm not talking, well, it may have something to do with personality, but it's probably the actual job positions.
No, well, that was an easy one because I was actually moving the facility from one area of the country to another. So therefore, I elected not to relocate 130 people.
I see. Okay.
I only actually relocated one person. And I hired, right, the others.
Okay. Okay. So you hired you hired 19 new people.
18. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you make decisions about where to use? I mean, sometimes it's pretty easy to see where you should use automation and robots and that sort of thing. Some things are pretty obvious. But what were some of the key human positions that you had to have?
The key human positions were engineering and plant engineering. The because the a part of profitability is eliminating downtime. So you don't want your equipment sitting idle.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So therefore, you have to be able to anticipate, maintenance issues and so on and so forth. And also, if a volume is down, use that time, right, to maintain all your equipment.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I'm just curious because we've spent some time talking about people, and I can see how that relates to what we're talking about, which is building a smart factory. But the human element is something. It's a little bit. People have a problem with this being replaced by robots, but I see it as a way to, if you have good talent there, you can upskill them to a more exciting position, perhaps if they have the skills, or if they have the desire and they are teachable and that sort of thing, and they want to. But what is your thought? What are your thoughts about the manufacturing skills gap that has been in manufacturing for decades now? We've been talking about it, where there are these skilled positions, and there's a fight among companies to get those skilled, talented people, and not only to get them, but to retain them and keep them.
Michelle, some of that is a misnomer.
Oh, yeah.
Because I truly believe that it all comes down to attitude and aptitude. You can give me a PhD who is dumber than donkey. And you can give me, right, somebody with a high school diploma, right, who has the right attitude and the aptitude, right, for whatever needs to be done. And they will do a wonderful job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
the problem is we just don't recognize that. We think that 5-year university degrees and so on and so forth qualifies you to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, in truth, it doesn't qualify you to do a damn thing.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, some things are teachable with the right person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it comes down to attitude and aptitude.
Right.
Because you have children.
I do.
Right?
They're grown now, but yes, they're in their 20s.
So you have grandchildren?
No, I don't have grandchildren yet, but my kids are in their mid-20s.
Okay. So they never had a problem with computers.
No, they never had a problem with computers.
See, that's attitude.
That's that's environment. I think has something to do with that.
No, that's true.
But and those are. But then there's some skills they lack. When you there's some skills that you and I have.
Uncommon common sense is
that they didn't, right? That they weren't raised with it, because they had a screen in front of them. They had the computer in front of them, and yes, they can work the computer, and they can show mom how to use the smartphone and that sort of thing, and hook us up to this platform and this podcasting platform and show us how to do that. But yeah, then there's some other things that that maybe they don't have, and that's a sign of the times, of course. Yeah. But
that's where I think this woke experiment is doomed to failure.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of organizations that are going to be pretty sorry that they started fooling around with the damned experiment.
Maybe, but that's a conversation for another day, probably. But when you talk about the difference in the generations, let's talk about that in a minute. Mm-hmm. So the younger generation that's just coming out of college now, like the age of my kids, for example, they're very tech savvy. They're great at computers. They're great probably at automation. They're probably great at designing software and this sort of thing. All those things that can help make a factory smart, right? But then you have our generation, which is a little bit more old school. And of course, we can embrace technology as much as we can, but there is a gap somewhere in there where you've got this older generation that's retiring now, and they're taking that tribal knowledge with them, and then the younger generation was just a whole different way of learning, of doing, of executing, and that sort of thing. How they do their job is just different than the older generation, and there is a gap in there somewhere. There's not really a blend of those two. Maybe there is. I could be wrong.
No, there isn't. And the reason there isn't is because the younger generation, right, never relied on people. They relied on their computer screen.
Yeah.
So therefore, their ability to interact, right, with the human condition, right, is a lot different to, shall we say, the boomers, if you will, right, who had to excel at the human
That's
condition.
right. I mean, I think an easy way to explain it would be that the older generation doesn't love to text, and the younger generation doesn't love to pick up a phone and make a phone call.
That's exactly
so
right.
there's and that's a big difference in the way we communicate and the way we live our lives. So how does that relate at all to manufacturing? I think it does relate in a lot of ways. The older generation is used to using their hands. They're used to asking questions. They're used to communicating with their superior, asking questions, asking to be taught, asking to learn, wanting to develop those new skills. And the younger generation has Google. Of course we have Google too, but they're so used to finding a video on YouTube, or, they maybe take responsibility for their own education and don't value what that older generation, the guy that's been on the manufacturing floor for 40 years, for example, the knowledge that he has to share. But it's also maybe hard for him to explain things in a way that make it clear.
I've never really found that. I found that people break down into it's the old Pareto law, right? The 80-20
right,
rule,
80-20.
20% of the people are really good, focused, generous. Will give of their time, will share their knowledge, and so on and so forth. And then there's the 80% who are just jacking. Right? So I don't think you're ever going to change.
Yeah,
that,
maybe not.
Right, but the younger generation, my perception is right that they believe they should be given something.
I think there is a sense of entitlement.
That's
with
exactly
this younger generation coming up. You see it. I hear it from manufacturers all the time when they talk about what the demands that this generation is making when they come into the plant right now. There's a big issue with, I've talked to some manufacturers who say, they come in, they want to work from home. They don't want to come into the office. They want to have extra vacation days. And this is a concern right now because the manufacturers on the other side need that talent, and so somewhere we have to meet in the middle. But
well, by the way, they don't have the talent because they haven't earned the talent.
Well, I think experience counts for something for sure.
That's
experience
true.
definitely is valuable.
That's a hell of a lot more valuable than an online university degree that you can actually pay somebody to pass for you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I haven't even thought about that. I guess I'm too honest a person. I would never do that, so it's hard for me to believe that somebody else would. But I guess they do. Yeah.
Well, over the course of my career, I've interviewed an awful lot of people, and I've seen an awful lot of resumes and so on and so forth. And when I look at resumes and what have you, and then I meet the individual in person, I say, "Where's this person in the resume?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you have to think about that. The interviewing process is different now too. A lot of that's happening online, and there's something about the human connection that's missing, maybe a little bit. We're getting this is such a fun conversation. I could talk to you all day, David. I'm enjoying it so very much. But we're getting close to the end of the time. So I wanted to. I asked this question to all my guests, so I want to ask you as well, and that is, just from your perspective, what does the factory of the future look like?
I'm not sure that I have a clear definition of what the factory of the future looks like, because it's not a lights out operation.
Yeah.
It won't be. I believe that most of our manufacturing in this country is done by small business. 80% is done by small business, not done by the Elon Musk or the GEs or whatever the case may be. So therefore, these are operations that these are people that work very hard for the money that they make.
Yeah.
So and generally they're very proud of what they do, right? And to me, the factory of the future is those factories that are dedicated to the 4 non-negotiables. And therefore, they will have very happy customers.
It kind of goes back to the fundamentals, right? You think that the factory of the future is all about hanging on to those fundamentals. And my other takeaway from our conversation is, okay, those 4 fundamentals that are non-negotiable, but then also just measuring everything and using all the data. I mean, we're really talking about data. And collecting data, analyzing data, and then figuring out what to do with that data, doing something about it, and finding solutions based on that data. And am I getting that right?
Yes, I'll give you one very quick statistic.
Okay.
In one organization, right, I measured all the invoices and all the credits. 40% of the invoices were wrong, which resulted in 40% of the invoices being having a credit assigned to it of one sort or another, which meant that 40% of the time people were making mistakes.
Yeah.
So that is a huge cost when you think about it.
Right.
If your average selling price of a product, just for example, right, is your average invoice value is $500, and your average credit is $100. You're actually discounting your product 20%. And you don't.
It's a different way of looking at it, right? And so how do you know that? You say you don't even know it. How do you discover that? Just by measuring and looking at it?
You measure it. That's right. Yeah, you measure the number of invoices, you measure the number of credits, and then you analyze, why are you crediting this stuff back?
Yeah.
Right? Was it because the wrong thing was shipped? Was it because the price was quoted wrong? Was it because the label was wrong? Whatever it was, all of that costs money. And while you're doing that, that means that you've got 40% too many people.
Interesting math and interesting observations. I'm learning a lot from you today. And I think, we go to, I just keep thinking of your motto, and I'll just repeat it again because it's a good place to end it. And that is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
That's exactly
That's
correct.
great. David, it has been such a pleasure. I appreciate your time so much, and I appreciate you sharing your wonderful experience and expertise with me and with all of the listeners.
Anytime.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Anytime.
This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.